Willets Point in Queens, New York, is home to almost 300 small auto repair businesses, where more than 2,000 employees, mostly immigrants, work under hard conditions in order to support their families.
We have been working here at Willets Point for a long time, for over 20 years. We offer very competitive prices. We like to allow people the opportunity to pay low prices because the economy is not doing well.
Todo tipo de trabajo más económico porque realmente ahorita la economía no está muy buena.
They always had to deal with a lack of public services and bad roads. But this community is now being displaced after the city approved a controversial renovation plan.
Nueva York está en un proceso de gran expansión.
New York is in a process of expanding big construction projects, displacing the Hispanic minority, all the races, all the ethnicities. They are being displaced in order to build condos for rich people.
Todos los grupos étnicos los están desplazando para hacer grandes condominios para la gente rica.
They want to kick everybody out of the business, and without any indemnization, any relocation. And our complaint against the city is that we need another place to be relocated and continue our business.
They claim that the city is violating their human and civil rights because it's letting the workers without a way to support their families, just because they are poor and immigrants.
But the city believe, or I can believe, because we are in a small business, we don't have the same rights like those big businesses has. Like example, across the street, that's in a big company. They bought the land, they bought the business. They're gonna be relocated, but because they are a big people, So I believe they discriminated us because we are a small business.
No hay parque industrial, no hay compensación para los trabajadores, no hay nada.
There is no place to work, there is not compensation for the workers, there is nothing. That is unbelievable. That's an abuse because the city is building over the human rights of the most vulnerable people, because we are Hispanics, because we don't speak English. For all those reasons, we have been discriminated against and we are going to end up on the streets.
Y vamos a quedar en la calle, en la cesantía, en la miseria.
Some of them have had their businesses shut down by the city, leaving the workers with the feeling that discrimination and racism are still an obstacle for those trying to make their living in the U.S.
Well, this is kind of where the rubber hits the road in these kind of arguments, because it has to do with jobs, who owns land, and businesses that are absolutely necessary. After all, if you've ever been to New York, you know it's full of cars. Somebody needs to be fixing those cars. But no neighborhood is going to lobby to have those businesses come in as a district. Noisy, dirty, but very necessary businesses. So how do you figure that out? Tom?
Don't get me started on eminent domain, because you talk about an equal opportunity evil. Although it's not essentially racist, and if you look at the most famous victim of eminent domain, Suzette Kelo, in the Kelo case 5 years ago, she was a white woman. But no question, as you say, it disproportionately affects the economically disadvantaged or weaker segments. It could be blacks, Latinos, whatever, and that's what's happening in Willets Point. So eminent domain is this political power to oppress. It's the power to deny property rights and characterize an area as blighted, let's say. When I look at pictures of Willets Point, hey, it's not like the main street in the little town where Linda grew up in Massachusetts. But to me, it looks like capitalism. It looks like a lot of hardworking people repairing cars and earning a living. And they ought to have the political right, equal right before the law, to stand up and say, this is my property, you can't have it. You can't force me out of it. Offer me a price that'll persuade me to move, but if you can't offer me that price, I'm staying here.
Well, I know the feasibility study for whatever they're going to build there, condos, shows that at the end of the day, there's going to be more economic activity because you've knocked down all those businesses, cleared them out, and built apartment buildings there.
Approach.
But exactly. But some deputy mayor for development, somebody is going to say.
I think, but also the issue here, it happens to be that these groups and those businesses owned by Latinos who obviously don't have a community or larger group that defend them and defend their interests before the city. And obviously they're not integrated or assimilated well as far as the English, as far as the laws of this country, the activism that would take their grievances. And I'm not even sure if it's eminent domain issue or not. I might be mistaken. But the fact that the city of New York or the state decided that they could take on these guys and with impunity and without offering them a relocation. Now imagine of these groups happens to be poor but white, small businesses but also white. Perhaps they will have an advantage that they will have a lot of people going out to defend them. Maybe the city will be conscious toward their activism that when it comes to election, when it comes to issue of voting, we'll take care of these issues. Perhaps we'll have town hall meetings. But it happens that these people are minority, they're Latinos or blacks, and they're poor, obviously, the lower income strata. I think, there is an element or a measure of discrimination here. I'm not saying it's outright because I don't know the details of the case, but from what I could see, there is a measure of discrimination.
It's tough also because this is not a folkloric district or a restaurant district. It's a land use that people are not clamoring to have moved to their area. Nobody's going to say, oh man, I hope we can get 100 car repair places to move into my area. Prices, though, right? Yeah, cheaper prices and noise and dirt and all the things that come with those kinds of land uses. But this is a good example, Marcelo, of the kind of, at the moment when immigrants say, nobody's listening to us. The fix is in. What's wrong with these people?
Yeah, and it seems an argument about below what they're speaking about businesses being moved out, about jobs and what kinds of jobs they'll have in that community. Immigrants feel like their voice isn't being heard, but it's part of a larger conversation in which immigrants continue to feel like their voice isn't heard, and it's that conversation about jobs and who will get a share of economic activity in this country. And I think it's important to remember that although the focus here in this story was on Latino immigrants and immigrant business owners, and maybe the city's developers and leaders, the friction isn't always between groups that are that clearly marked or that familiar in our minds. I recently had the opportunity to spend a good amount of time in southern Mississippi, and the conflict there was actually between African-American citizens who had been residents in that part of Mississippi for a long time and immigrant newcomers. And the black people who had been there for a long time actually ran the city, ran all the institutions in that city. And the Latinos felt like they were getting a bum rap from the African-American leadership, that they were being discriminated against and blamed for the economic ills that part of Mississippi was feeling. So there's a very interesting realignment and really interesting coming to terms with each other that's happening quite apart from what happens with white Americans, who we always see as, maybe simplistically as the oppressor in every situation.
The villain.
Right.
Well, Linda, what about the notion, and I thought of this after I watched these poor fellows in Willis Point and students at City College, that this is a deeply American story. And if you would ask Irish teenagers in 1875 or Eastern European Jewish teenagers in 1905 or Italian teenagers in New York in 1919, you would have gotten very, very similar stories. There's almost a cycle of ethnic hazing that goes on, and a lot of this is just going to be taken care of by time.
Ethnic hazing. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an element of that, and it comes back to, that sense of acceptance in the community and different parts of a community coming together and being able to be one community. And Ali mentioned earlier something about, some, whether it's Muslims or other immigrants not feeling accepted and what they might revert to their own community if they don't feel accepted by the others who are non-immigrants. Unfortunately, I think that that's what happens on the other side of this debate, which is someplace like Arizona, where you have white Americans who initially, as Ali said, welcomed people from Mexico and elsewhere to take the jobs in the less desirable places in agriculture or whatever it is, but they were willing to do jobs that the white people who are already living there didn't want to do for lower wages. They took advantage of that, and that gave a benefit to the community. But to the extent that they start feeling threatened as those newcomers become more integrated into the community, they start to revert to their own white community, don't they? And to their religion, as you said. And, so you hear, with the debate, you hear references to, their sort of fundamental Christian values and their fundamental individual interests in what's mine is mine. And that's not uniquely white, and it's not uniquely Muslim, but unfortunately, each reverting to their own community when they feel like they're at odds is, pushing in the opposite direction of where we need to go.